As moonlight bathed the golden palace, everyone was lost in revelry. The crystal chandeliers in the ballroom shone, as brightly as 1,000 stars falling at once, and the air was thick with the scent of champagne, roses, and the rich musk emanating from the alpha nobles. The music played softly, the dance floor swirled. Every alpha was hunting for their prey, every beta was carefully maintaining their composure, and the omegas, those beautiful creatures favored by fate, dressed in the most expensive silk gowns and wearing heirloom moonstone necklaces, were waiting to be chosen by a powerful alpha. But you were in the corner. You're huddled behind a massive stone pillar, the hem of your dress already dusted with dirt, dust you picked up squeezing through the servants' entrance to get into the ball. This dress isn't yours. It's a second-hand gown you snagged at a flea market with the pocket money you'd secretly saved up over 3 months. The off-white cotton fabric is embroidered with a few simple little daisies, so understated it's almost transparent. Your hair is barely styled, just a casual braid. Your cheeks are flushed unnaturally from nervousness. Your lips are parched, and your fingers grip the hem of your dress so tightly that your knuckles have turned white. You are an omega. But you are an omega forgotten by the entire pack. Your pheromones are so faint, they're almost undetectable. Alphas don't even glance your way when they pass by. You're thin, your features aren't particularly refined, and your skin is rough from years of hard labor. In the Moonlight clan, an omega's worth is almost entirely defined by beauty and the purity of their pheromones, and you fall short on both counts. Clan members call you the ugly duckling behind your back, and some even say it to your face, this swan will likely never hatch. Your mother left when you were very young, and your father, a beta, felt both helpless and powerless to help his daughter with such weak pheromones. From a young age, you knew your life held only 2 paths, either be hastily marked as a breeding tool by some low-ranking alpha, or remain forever trapped on the fringes of the pack, a nameless laborer. But tonight, you refuse to accept your fate. You've heard that the Alpha King, the supreme ruler of Silver Moon Forest, the legendary king of alphas, will be attending this annual ball. The king is nearing 30 yet has never marked a single omega. Legend has it, he is waiting for his destined mate. Legend has it, his pheromones are so potent, they make every omega within a 10-meter radius weak at the knees. And you just want to catch a glimpse of him from afar, even if it's just a single glance, even if the guards throw you out, even if you have to return to the kitchen to wash dishes tomorrow. You must see with your own eyes what the man known as the Silver Reaper actually looks like. Halfway through the ball, the doors suddenly swung open. A suffocatingly powerful pheromone surged in like a tidal wave, and the entire hall fell instantly silent. Conversations ceased abruptly, wine glasses hung mid-air forgotten, and even the music seemed to pause for a second, crushed by that force. Every omega involuntarily lifted their chin, eyes glazed over, lips slightly parted, as if pulled by invisible chains toward the doorway. Then, he walked in. The king of alphas, Cole Saville. His short, silver-gray hair shone like wolf's tail hair under moonlight. His amber eyes were as cold as a frozen lake. His jawline was so sharp it seemed capable of slicing through the air. He wore a deep black military dress uniform, with a silver wolf's head emblem embedded in his epaulets. His boots struck the marble floor, each step like a drumbeat echoing in everyone's hearts. His gaze swept slowly across the crowd's faces, his expression impassive, as if surveying a collection of insignificant exhibits. And in that moment, a single thought filled your mind. It's over. I've been discovered. Because the instant his gaze swept past the stone pillar behind you, his footsteps suddenly halted. Everyone's eyes followed his line of sight. The air froze. The elegantly dressed omega standing in front of you turned their heads, their eyes filled with confusion and disdain. Who was the king looking at? In that direction, there was only a drab, ugly duckling hiding behind a pillar. Your heart thudded against your chest. Cole Seville was walking toward you. His pace wasn't fast, but every step carried an undeniable sense of pressure, like a wolf that had locked onto its prey. You heard gasps of shock around you, and the sharp whisper of a noble Omega. How did she even get in here? You felt your legs trembling. Your knees could barely support your weight. He stopped, right in front of you. He was close enough that you could smell the sharp scent of cedar mixed with gunpowder on him. His presence engulfed you completely. You didn't even dare to look up. You felt his burning gaze settle on the top of your head, then travel down through your hair to your trembling shoulders. What is your name? His voice was low and hoarse, as if the syllables were ground out from the depths of his throat, carrying a strange heat that made your earlobes tingle. You opened your mouth, but your voice felt as if it were being choked off. Ella. His expression changed. Those amber pupils suddenly contracted, like the instinctive reaction of a feline catching sight of prey in the dark. Then he made a move no one had anticipated. He turned his head, leaned in slightly, his nose almost touching the side of your neck. You held your breath. He sniffed for a long time, long enough that you felt the gaze of the entire ball transform into tangible nails, piercing your skin in a dense swarm. Then he straightened up in a voice loud enough for everyone present to hear, said word by word, "You are mine." The room erupted in an uproar, and you, in that instant, caught a strange scent emanating from your own body, from the pulse at your wrist, from the glands at the nape of your neck. A pheromone suppressed for 22 long years, quietly surging forth like spring water breaking through the ice. It was the fresh scent of moonlight grass mingled with post-rain earth, so faint it was almost imperceptible. Yet the king was struck as if by lightning, his pupils trembling violently. You saw it. Something shattered deep within his gaze. That icy shell, that mask of a monarch, cracked open a fissure in that instant. He clenched his teeth, the veins at his temples throbbing slightly, as if he were struggling to suppress some impulse on the verge of spiraling out of control. He whispered a sentence only you could hear. "You've always been here. You've always been here. You've always been here. Yet I've been searching for 19 years. 19 years. His destiny, the Omega foretold in the prophecy to resonate with his soul, was actually you, that ugly duckling mocked by everyone, abandoned by his family, whose pheromones were so faint they were almost non-existent. This is the Pandora's box that fate has opened tonight. After the ball, you were shown to a guest room in the west wing of Silver Moon Palace. Velvet curtains, a carved brass bed, and a warm fire crackling in the fireplace. But you didn't sleep a wink all night. It wasn't because you were excited. It was because you were afraid. You've known one truth since childhood. If you take something that doesn't belong to you by force, you will surely pay the price. This dress was borrowed, this room was temporary, and those words, "You are mine," might have been nothing more than a whim of the king's. You tossed and turned, thinking of his amber eyes, the warmth of his fingertips, and his words. "I've been searching for 19 years. But the deeper you thought, the wider the void in your heart grew. Were you even worthy? An ugly duckling who can't even complete her transformation. What right does she have to be chosen by the moon? When dawn broke, the king didn't come. Instead, a woman arrived. She didn't kick the door down. She didn't even knock. She simply pushed the door open and walked in, as if entering her own room, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She wore a dark green hunting outfit, her long hair pulled up high, revealing a face so delicate it was almost sharp. Her gaze swept over your face. No contempt, no disgust, not even a trace of emotion, as if she were looking at a piece of furniture. "My name is Viola Moonshade," she said, her voice as calm as if she were reading a document. "I am the chief guard of the Silver Moon Throne, and I am Cole Seville's fiancé." Those last 3 words, stabbed into your chest like a knife. You instinctively clenched the corner of the blanket. You knew exactly what the word fiancé meant among the moonlight wolves. Although the Alpha King had the right to choose his own queen, marriages between noble houses were arranged long before his coronation. Cole Seville had been on the throne for 12 years and had yet to formally take a wife. But everyone knew the eldest daughter of the Moonshadow family had been waiting for him all along. This isn't a secret. It's an unspoken understanding shared by the entire clan. And you, a wild girl who crawled out of the kitchen, are about to shatter that understanding overnight. You didn't speak because you didn't know what to say. Your identity, status, and power, none of them could be weighed on the same scale as hers. The only thing you had was the words Cole spoke in public last night. But could those words feed you? Could they serve as a talisman? Viola stood before you, looking down at you for a long time. Then she suddenly smiled. There was no malice in that smile. It even carried a hint of sincere sympathy, which pained you more than any malice. Do you know why Cole hasn't been able to find you in 19 years? She asked. You froze. Do you think his power wasn't great enough, or that you hid yourself well enough? Viola sat down in the chair beside your bed, elegantly crossing her legs as if recounting a story that had nothing to do with her. Your name and records were erased from every register of the Moonlight Wolf clan. Your birth records, your pheromone test reports, your parents' files, all vanished without a trace. A living, breathing person completely non-existent in the system. Who do you think did that? Your mind went blank. You had never considered this question. You'd always assumed you were overlooked because you weren't good enough, because you didn't deserve to be seen. But it had never occurred to you. Perhaps it wasn't that you lacked a presence, but that someone had deliberately made you non-existent. Before she gave birth to you, your mother was a handmaiden of the Moonshadow clan. Viola's tone remained calm, as if recounting a long-forgotten case. She vanished suddenly after becoming pregnant with you. No one knew where she went, nor with whom she had you. The clan leader ordered a search for her, but everyone sent out returned empty-handed. It wasn't until 19 years later that you appeared at the ball, like a seed sprouting from the ground. She paused, her gaze fixed on your eyes, as she looked at you intently. I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to remind you. You were hidden away for 19 years, and there must be someone behind it all who didn't want Cole to find you. And that person is far more patient than I am. You were speechless. Your mind was in turmoil. This woman standing before you, whom you'd previously believed to be your romantic rival, your obstacle, the villain sent to drive you away. Every word she spoke felt like a needle, piercing the very place you'd always been too afraid to touch, your origins, your mother, that secret that had never been spoken of. Viola stood up, walked to the door, and glanced back at you. There was no hostility in that glance, only a complex emotion, like the indescribable look on the face of a veteran who stood on the battlefield too long, watching a green recruit being pushed into the fray. I did want to be his queen, she said, but that's because I've known since I was a child that the person standing by his side must be strong enough to share the burden of the Moonshadow clan's constraints with him. The way you are now, I could crush you with one hand. If he chose you, you wouldn't last 3 months. The door closed. You sat alone on the bed, your hands trembling. It wasn't because you were afraid of Viola, but because her words had touched upon a question you'd spent your entire childhood avoiding. Who exactly was your mother? Why did she run away after giving birth to you? Why were your records erased? Why had Cole been unable to find you for 19 years? It wasn't that you were hiding too well. It was that a powerful figure didn't want you to be found, and that person now knows you've been exposed. You suddenly understood Viola's true purpose in visiting you. She wasn't declaring war, she was warning you. She'd rather marry Cole herself than see an innocent little girl who knew nothing get dragged into this vortex and die for no apparent reason. Her words, "She won't live past 3 months," were not a threat, but a prophecy. And Cole, your king of Alfar, what is he doing at this very moment? He is in a secret chamber deep within the Silver Moon Palace, facing a man in black kneeling before him. That man is his chief spy, who has served him for 15 years without ever failing. "What have you found?" Cole's voice was as heavy as a stone. The man in black kept his head bowed, his voice trembling slightly. "Miss Ella's birth records were indeed deliberately destroyed, but I found a fragment of a handwritten document from a midwife in the old quarter. It details the exact circumstances of Miss Ella's birth. She was born on the night of a lunar eclipse, when there was no moon in the sky." Cole's fingers clenched tightly. The night of a lunar eclipse, the hour the wolf clan fears most. Legend has it that werewolves born during a lunar eclipse are abandoned by the moonlight, born without the protection of the wolf spirit, a sign of a curse. Such children are usually secretly executed by the Council of Elders. "What else?" Cole's knuckles turned white. The man in black bowed his head even lower. "The midwife said Miss Ella's mother died in childbirth, but her body was stolen that very night. The next day, someone set fire to the midwife's house, trying to destroy all evidence. The midwife narrowly escaped and has been hiding outside the city ever since, too afraid to return." The air in the secret chamber seemed to freeze. Cole closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His mind was racing. Simone had known the contents of the prophecy when he was 8 years old. Someone had begun laying the groundwork when he was still just a child. His destined mate had been branded taboo the moment she was born, her mother murdered, her identity erased, and she had been cast into the lowest-ranking family to work as a servant, like a pearl hidden in a pile of sand. And the one who orchestrated it all had hidden right under his nose for 19 years, their methods clean and precise, leaving no trace. Cole opened his eyes. The amber in their depths had turned to a deep, dark gold, a sign that the wolf's spirit was boiling within him. "Keep investigating," he said. "Bring that midwife before me." The secret agent withdrew. After the door to the secret chamber closed, Cole stood alone in the darkness, his hands braced on the stone table, head bowed, shoulders trembling slightly. It was not fear, but rage so cold it was like a raging fire beneath the ice. He had never imagined that the reason his 19-year search had yielded nothing was not because fate was playing tricks on him, but because someone was defying fate itself. He recalled the moment last night when you looked up at him. There was no surprise in your eyes, no greed, only a cautious bewilderment, as if you'd been yanked abruptly from the darkness into blinding sunlight, unsure of which way to turn. In that instant, he knew your past must have been a difficult one. He knew it now, the life you were living now, the cold stares, the rejection, those nights when you were called an ugly duckling. It was all a script written for you by others. When he stepped out of the secret room, it was already broad daylight outside. The sunlight fell on his face, and his short, silver, gray hair glinted with a cold sheen in the light. He strode toward the west wing, his steps steady, but his clenched fists never relaxed. He was going to tell you something, no matter whose daughter you were, no matter what curse your birth carried, no matter who that person hiding in the shadows was. His choice, from the moment he saw you last night, had left him with no way back. But when he reached the guest room door, it was open. The room was empty. You were gone. He stood in the empty doorway, motionless for a long time. The morning breeze swept through the corridor, ruffling the strands of hair on his forehead. His face was expressionless, but that blank face was more terrifying than any rage. He turned and walked toward the moon, Shadow Clan's estate, his pace unhurried, each step leaving a heavy echo in the corridor. King Alfar of the Silver Moon Forest had only one thought in his mind at that moment. They had crossed the wrong person, and this time he would not spend another 19 years searching for you. The news of your disappearance was like a pebble dropped into still water. The ripples it sent through the silver moon palace were far greater than he had anticipated. As Cole emerged from the west wing, the servants lining the corridor bowed their heads in unison. But his gaze swept over them like a knife, searching every bowed neck for signs of trembling, every averted gaze for traces of guilt. No one dared to look up at him. He quickened his pace across the central courtyard. The patrolling guards he passed, seeing the look on his face, automatically stepped aside, not daring to breathe a single breath. He walked straight into the Silver Moon Hall and pushed open the doors to the council chamber. The few elders seated inside were engaged in hushed conversation. Upon seeing him burst in, they all froze for a moment. Cole's gaze swept over their faces one by one, then he spoke. His voice was not loud, but it carried a calmness that sent a chill down one's spine. "Where is the Moon Shadow Clan?" Grand Elder Cecil stood up. He was a gray-haired old alpha who in his youth had been a highly decorated commander of the Moonlight Wolf Clan. Now, in his old age, he was primarily responsible for mediating conflicts among the nobles. Frowning, he said, "The head of the Moon Shadow Clan left the city this morning with her guard to patrol the borders. She is expected back in 3 days. What is the matter?" Cole said nothing. His gaze shifted to the beta clerk sitting in the corner, who was in charge of internal records. Miss Ella, who checked into the West Wing guest quarters last night, has gone missing this morning. Viola, the chief bodyguard of the Moon Shadow Clan, had gone to see her prior to this. "Send for Viola." A stir rippled through the hall. The elders exchanged glances, and some began to whisper. It was common knowledge throughout the clan that Viola was Cole's fiancée. Now that the king was openly summoning his fiancée for questioning over some wild girl of unknown origin, the rumors that would spread would not be pleasant. Elder Cecil cleared his throat and spoke earnestly. "Your Majesty, might we reconsider this matter? You know Viola's temperament. She has a fiery nature, but she acts with restraint. She would not lay a hand on your men without cause." Cole turned and looked at Cecil. There was no anger in that gaze, no threat, only a patience that ran deep to the bone. He said, "Grand Elder, I have always held you in high regard. But you just said, without cause, if she were to take action against my people, she would indeed need a reason. Tell me, what reason would she find?" Cecil froze. The other elders froze as well. Cole's words sounded like a simple question, but the question itself had already revealed something no one had realized. Viola was not acting without cause. She had a reason to act against you, and that reason was precisely the seat she had been waiting for all along. Before long, Viola entered the council chamber. She had changed her attire, still wearing a dark green hunting outfit, her long hair cascading over her shoulders, her pace unhurried. Her face betrayed no sign of guilt, even upon seeing Cole's sullen expression. She raised the corners of her mouth slightly. "Did His Majesty summon me?" Cole stared at her, saying nothing, just staring. His silence was an interrogation in itself. Viola felt the weight of that silence for a few breaths before finally suppressing the faint smile on her lips. She spoke with a serious expression. "Your little Omega has gone missing. I heard about it on my way here. But let me make this clear. I did go to her room this morning, but I went to deliver a gift." At these words, even Cole seemed momentarily taken aback. Viola drew a small cloth pouch from her waist, opened it, and revealed a bracelet woven from dried laurel flowers and wolf's teeth. She said, "According to the ancient customs of the Moonlight Wolf Clan, on the day a new clan member moves into the main palace, the clan head or the captain of the guard should present a welcome gift as a sign of acceptance. This custom was interrupted 20 years ago due to the war, but that is how my grandmother taught me. I was simply doing what I was supposed to do. As for where she went after I left, I have no idea." Her tone was so open and honest that it didn't sound like she was lying. She even added, "You can send someone to check the time I left her room, and then check the time she went missing." There was at least half an hour between the two. If I truly wanted to harm her, I wouldn't have left such a large gap. Cole's gaze lingered on her face for a long time. He knew Viola's character. She was proud. She was domineering, but she wouldn't stoop to underhanded tactics. If she truly wanted to make someone disappear, she would do it openly in front of everyone, rather than secretly taking them away and hiding them. That was why he had tacitly approved the Moon Shadow family's choice of her as his fiancée. Not out of affection, but out of trust. But now, a more unsettling question arose. If it wasn't Viola, then who was it? Just as the silence hung heavy, a young guard rushed into the council chamber and knelt on one knee. "Your Majesty, the city gate guards have just intercepted a suspicious carriage carrying several large wooden crates. During the inspection, a secret compartment was discovered at the bottom of one of the crates, containing a woman curled up inside who claimed to have been drugged. Based on the description, she is likely Miss Ella." The entire hall erupted in commotion once more. Cole sprang to his feet almost instantly and strode toward the door. As he crossed the threshold, his steps faltered slightly, and he glanced back at Viola. She stood where she was, her arms crossed over her chest, wearing an expression that seemed to say, "I told you it wasn't me." But deep in her eyes, there was a subtle shift, a flicker of alertness. As a female alpha who had been steeped in the world of political intrigue for over a decade, she sensed a scent in this news that didn't belong to any faction she knew. Someone wants to smuggle you out of the city, and this person acts with such sophistication and meticulous preparation that it doesn't seem like a spur of the moment decision, but rather a long-planned scheme. If you hadn't been discovered in time, the moment the car left the city, you would have truly vanished without a trace. And this smear campaign would inevitably be pinned on Viola, because she was the only one who had come looking for you this morning. She was the person in the entire palace with the strongest motive to harm you, and she was the one with sufficient resources to pull something like this off. Cole stopped in his tracks as he reached the doorway, turned around and glanced at Viola. He asked her a question, his tone tinged with a complex sense of probing. "What do you make of this?" Viola was silent for a few seconds, then lifted her head and met Cole's gaze as she spoke a sentence that would later be endlessly dissected by countless people. "Your Majesty, what you should be worried about right now isn't whether I harmed her. You should be worried that there is someone who wants her dead even more than I do." As the iron door of the dungeon closed behind him, you heard the lock turn. 2 turns, locked tight. The footsteps grew fainter and fainter until they vanished completely at the end of the corridor. You stood in the darkness, the texture of that letter still in the palm of your hand. Worn paper, its edges brittle, crumbling at the slightest touch. You could see nothing, but your mind was filled with the image of those few lines flashing before your eyes. The moment had been too fleeting, so fast that your brain hadn't had time to process the information. Yet one word was seared onto your retina like a branding iron. Moon Shadow. At the end of the corridor, Cole was blocked by 7 or 8 guards, clad in dark gray leather armor. He had never seen the man in charge before, but he recognized the silver wolf head totem engraved on his armor. It was the private guard emblem of the Moon Shadow clan. "Your Majesty," the man bowed slightly, his tone respectful but his body immovable, blocking the center of the passage like a wall. "The clan leader has ordered that the dungeons are a restricted area. No one outside the clan is permitted to enter. Please forgive us, Your Majesty." Cole said nothing, but simply kept walking forward. The captain's expression froze for a moment. He clearly hadn't anticipated the king would respond this way. Not with a rebuke, not with a command, but by walking forward silently and unceasingly. The distance between them grew ever shorter. 5 meters, 3 meters, 1 meter, and the captain's instincts made him grasp the hilt of the sword at his waist. But the very instant his fingers touched the hilt, Cole moved. No one saw how he struck. There was only a snap as the captain's wrist bent at an impossible angle, and the sword still sheathed fell to the ground along with its scabbard. The captain let out a muffled groan and dropped to one knee, beads of sweat instantly rolling down his forehead. Cole didn't look down at him. He stepped around the man and continued on his way. The remaining 7 guards exchanged glances. None dared to step forward. They stood there, like a row of wooden stakes, driven into the ground, watching helplessly as Cole walked right through their ranks. When Cole returned to the cell door, he saw you still sitting on the pile of straw, the letter clenched in your hand, the paper already softened by your sweat. He crouched down to meet your eye level. What did you see? You opened your mouth, your voice a little dry. Moon Shadow, that name appeared next to my birth record. Cole's pupils contracted slightly. He didn't respond, but waited for you to continue. You took a deep breath, trying to keep your voice steady. My mother died the day I was born. The midwife wrote my mother's name on my birth record, and next to it someone had written a note. Father unknown, maternal lineage linked to the Moonshadow clan. It is recommended that the infant be handed over to the Moonshadow family for disposition. Your voice trailed off as you said this. You lowered your head, staring at the blurred handwriting on the letter, as if to confirm you hadn't misread it. Then you looked up, met Cole's eyes, and said word by word, "My mother was a member of the Moonshadow family. She wasn't a servant. She was the clan leader's own sister." An oil lamp in the hallway flared up with a crackle, the sound jarring against the silence. Cole's expression didn't change, but a vein on his wrist throbbed slightly. He was silent for a long time, then spoke. "Are you sure?" You flipped the letter over and pointed to a line of small text on the back, half smudged by ink. "It says here, Lydia Moonshadow, second daughter of the Moonshadow family, a deserter." The air froze. Second daughter of the Moonshadow family, a deserter. Those 2 words placed together were like 2 keys inserted into the same lock at once. In Cole's mind, the fragments that had remained incomplete for 19 years suddenly clicked into place, fitting together perfectly. Why had your records been wiped clean? Because the head of the Moonshadow family didn't want anyone to know his own sister had given birth to a child. Why were you raised in a lowly beta family? Because they wanted to hide you in the most inconspicuous corner, where no one would ever notice you. Why had Cole searched for 19 years without finding you? Because the ones hiding you were the very family closest to him, the ones he trusted most. And that family had known the contents of the prophecy for 19 years. Cole slowly stood up. He didn't say a word, but his silence was more deafening than any roar. He turned to face the darkness at the far end of the corridor, his back to you, his voice as calm as a frozen river. "Wait here for me. Don't go anywhere." "Where are you going?" He didn't answer. He stepped into the darkness, his footsteps echoing hollowly off the stone walls. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, before disappearing completely around the corner. You clenched the letter, a thought welling up inside you that you dared not even acknowledge. He wasn't going to confront clan leader Moonshadow. He was going to kill someone. When Cole entered the Moonshadow clan's territory, the guards stopped him. It wasn't a mere symbolic gesture. 2 guards clad in black iron armor stood side by side before the archway, arms crossed, chins held high, making it clear they had no intention of letting him pass. In the 300 years of the Moonlight Wolves, no clan had ever dared to adopt such a posture in the presence of the king. But tonight, the Moonshadow clan had done just that. Cole stopped in his tracks, his gaze sweeping past the guard's shoulders to the brightly lit main hall beyond the archway. He smelled blood, fresh blood. It was wafting out from the hall. "The clan chief is waiting for you," the guard on the left said, his tone as matter of fact as if he were commenting on the weather. Without waiting for Cole's reply, he stepped aside to clear a path. As Cole entered the main hall, this was the scene that greeted him. The head of the Moonshadow family, Aldrich Moonshadow, was seated in the seat of honor, leisurely wiping the blood from his fingers with a white cloth. On the low table before him lay a dagger. The blood on its blade had not yet dried. At his feet, a man dressed as a spy lay in a pool of blood. His throat slit cleanly. He was no longer breathing. Aldrich looked up as Cole entered, a perfectly measured smile spreading across his face. "Your Majesty, why did you not give advance notice of your late-night visit? I could have prepared some tea." Cole glanced at the corpse on the floor, then at the blood-stained white cloth in Aldrich's hand. He recognized the dead spy. It was the man he had sent to investigate the midwife. "You silenced the witness." Aldrich folded the white cloth and placed it on the table, his movements as composed as if he had just finished dinner. "Witness? Does your Majesty mean this man? He broke into my storeroom to steal something tonight and was caught red-handed by my guards. According to clan law, anyone trespassing on Moonshadow territory is to be killed on sight. As clan chief, I acted in accordance with the law. Is there a problem with that?" Cole's right hand clenched into a fist, then relaxed. He looked at Aldrich's smiling face, and for the first time, truly saw the man he had known for over 20 years. Aldrich Moonshade, head of the Moonlight Wolf clan's most noble house, the mentor who had taught him swordsmanship since childhood, and the throne's most loyal supporter. He was also the man who had hidden his destined mate for 19 years, killed his mother's own sister, and burned all the evidence. "Lydia Moonlight," Cole said the name. The smile on Aldrich's face froze. It didn't vanish, it froze. Like a record suddenly skipping a frame, every expression frozen on his face. "She's your own sister," Cole continued, his voice not loud, but every word driving like a nail into the air. 19 years ago, she gave birth to a daughter. You feared that child would become the one foretold in the prophecy, that she would shatter the power structure you've spent decades building. So you killed your own sister, abandoned that child to a low-ranking beta family, and erased every trace of her existence. Aldrich, am I right? The main hall fell silent for a long time. A log in the fireplace snapped, emitting a sharp crack. Aldrich lowered his head, staring at the blood-stained white cloth in his hands, and remained silent for a long time. Then he smiled, not a forced smile, but one of relief, as if a secret he'd kept bottled up for 19 years had finally been exposed, and he felt lighter for it. "When did you find out?" "Today." "From whom?" "Her mother left a letter." Aldrich nodded. He tossed the white cloth into the fireplace, watched it get swallowed by the flames, then stood up and walked over to Cole. The two of them faced each other across a low table, close enough to see the flickering flames in each other's pupils. "Then let me tell you something the letter didn't mention." Aldrich's voice was hushed, as if he feared disturbing someone behind the walls. "Lydia is my own sister. That's true. She is also the Moonlight Wolf clan's finest seer in nearly a century. When she was 18, she saw fragments of the future. She saw a child of impure blood sitting on the Silver Moon throne, saw the Wolf clan's bloodline defiled by outsiders, saw the Moonlight Wolf clan falling apart in internal strife. She thought it was fate. I think it's bullshit." Cole stared at him, saying nothing. Aldrich extended his index finger and tapped his temple. "Do you know what the most terrifying thing about a prophet is? It's not that she can see the future. It's that when she sees it, she'll do everything in her power to make that future come true." Lydia believed in the vision she saw. She thought it was the moon goddess's will for that child to sit on the throne. "But I don't believe it. I believe the future can be changed. As long as that child who should never have been born doesn't exist, and that impure blood doesn't flow into the royal line, the Moonlight Wolves won't split apart." He paused, a hint of weariness creeping into his voice. "So I did what I had to do. You killed your own sister. She chose her prophecy. I chose my clan." Cole placed his right hand on the hilt of the dagger at his waist. He didn't draw it, but that single gesture was enough to drop the temperature in the entire main hall to freezing. Aldrich watched his hand on the hilt and smiled again. This time, the smile carried an indescribable quality. Something like regret, yet also like resignation. Are you going to kill me? You shouldn't have killed her. Whether I should have or not, it's already done. Aldrich spread his arms wide, exposing his chest in a completely defenseless posture. Come, your majesty, draw your blade and thrust it here. By the time the sun rises tomorrow, the entire Moonlight Wolf clan will know that their king, for the sake of an Omega of unknown origin, killed the head of the Moon Shadow clan and the mentor who raised him from childhood. Do you have any idea what those clans, who have long had their eyes on the throne, will do? Do you have any idea how many days your little Omega, still waiting for you in the dungeon, will survive in this seat? Cole's fingers tightened around the hilt of his sword until his knuckles turned white. He did not draw it. Aldrich lowered his hands, took a step back, and sat back down in his seat. He picked up the cup of tea on the table, long since cold, took a sip, and then spoke a sentence that made Cole freeze in his tracks. Do you remember that Rule from the Moon God Festival? Rule, the blood-related consort of the heir to the throne, must pass the blood moon trial before the coronation. That rule was established by my great-grandfather, and there has never been an exception in 300 years. Your Majesty, suppose I were to reveal her true identity and have her participate in the blood moon trial as the daughter of a defector from the Moon Shadow clan. Do you think she'd make it out alive? Cole released the knife handle and remained silent for a long time. The fire in the hearth cast shifting shadows of light and dark across his face. He looked away and gazed at the full moon outside the window. Moonlight filtered through the carved window panes, casting a narrow beam of light onto the floor. He suddenly spoke. She's going to take the blood moon trial. She has to. Aldrich's hand, holding the teacup, hovered in the air for a split second. It's not because you're forcing me. Cole turned his head, his gaze fixed on Aldrich's face, as still as a pool of stagnant water. It's because she needs to prove something. Not to the clan, not to you, but to herself. You've hidden her for 19 years, making her believe she's a worthless failure incapable, even of shapeshifting. Now she needs to know she can stand on her own 2 feet. He turned and walked toward the door, pausing at the threshold without looking back. I'll go to the dungeon to fetch her tomorrow. Have all the documents and the venue for the blood moon trial ready for me. If you tamper with anything again, Aldrich, I won't kill you. I'll uproot the Moon Shadow clan's 300-year legacy, tearing it down piece by piece right before your eyes. The door closed behind him. In the dungeon, you were still sitting on that pile of straw, the letter already folded and tucked close to your body. You heard footsteps coming from the end of the corridor, growing louder as they approached, steady and powerful. The oil lamp's flame flickered, and then Cole's figure appeared outside the iron bars. He didn't have a key. He used the same method as before. He kicked the iron door with all his might. The lock shattered, and the door flew open, slamming against the wall with a dull thud. He walked in, stood before you, and looked down at you. Remember, starting tomorrow, no matter what anyone says or what you see, you must not back down. Are you afraid? You clenched the wolf's fang in your palm. Its sharp tip dug into your flesh, and the pain stopped your hand from trembling. You looked up into his eyes and said, I'm afraid, but I won't back down. Cole was silent for 2 seconds. Then he reached out and pulled you to your feet. His palm was burning hot, and his grip was so tight it felt like he might crush your bones. But you didn't pull away. You let him lead you out of the dungeon, through the dim corridor, up the steps, and out into the moonlight. The night breeze swept against your face, carrying the scent of fresh grass and dew. You stood on the stone steps in the palace's rear courtyard and looked up to see the full moon hanging overhead, so large it seemed you could reach out and touch it. Your name is Ella Moonlight. You turned to look at him. He stood beside you, not looking at you, his gaze fixed straight ahead into the darkness. Whether you admit it or not, whether you like it or not, your bloodline belongs to the Moonlight clan. Before the Blood Moon trial begins tomorrow, the Council of Elders will publicly announce your lineage. By then, the entire clan will know who you are. Then, they'll also know my mother was killed by her own brother. Cole turned his head and glanced at you. They don't know, at least not yet. Keep that letter. It's your only trump card. Don't show it to anyone until you've made it out of the trial alive. You clenched the wolf fang even tighter. The sharp end dug into the palm of your hand, and the slight pain brought you back to your senses. What exactly is the Blood Moon trial? 3 stages. Cole held up a finger. The first stage, the Crimson Moon wastes. You will be dropped into the uninhabited zone at the northern foot of the Silver Moon Mountains, where hordes of untamed wild wolves and mutated beasts roam. You must survive there for 3 days and 3 nights. No weapons, no guards, and no supplies. Before you could ask, he held up a second finger. The second trial, the broken bridge of the Moonlight Ravine. Once you've made it out of the wilderness alive, you'll reach the Moonlight Ravine. There's a broken bridge there with a 300-meter deep chasm below. You must cross it under your own power. How you do it, running, jumping, climbing, is up to you. But that final step across the bridge must be taken by you alone. Your Adam's apple bobbed, but you said nothing. Cole held up a third finger. He paused, his gaze lingering on your face for a moment. The third trial, the Moon Shadow Chamber. It is an illusion created by the ancestors of the Moon Shadow clan. According to records, every member of the Moon Shadow bloodline who has entered the chamber has seen something. Whether a prophecy, a vision of the past, or a hallucination. No one knows what you will see, but you must go in and then come out. He withdrew his finger, lowered his hand, and looked at you, pass all 3 trials, and you will be recognized by the Moonlight Wolf clan as a candidate for queen. No one, including Aldrich, will be able to question your claim on the basis of bloodline anymore. What if someone wants me to die in the trials? The corner of Cole's mouth twitched slightly. It wasn't a smile. It was a curve of coldness that went right to the bone. Whoever lets you die in the trials, I'll make their entire clan pay with their lives. His voice was soft, his tone unemotional, as if he were stating a matter of fact. But you saw something in his eyes, not a threat, but resolve. He really would do it. You lowered your head, staring at the wolf fang in the palm of your hand, and remained silent for a long time. Then you looked up. The moonlight fell on your face, casting a silvery glow over your gaunt features. When does it start tomorrow? Before sunrise, the Council of Elders will assemble the entire clan at Blood Moon Square. All right. You turned and walked toward the palace. Cole called out to you. Where are you going? Without turning back, you replied, to sleep. We'll be running for 3 days and 3 nights starting tomorrow. If I don't get enough sleep tonight, I won't make it. Before sunrise, Blood Moon Square was already packed with people. Nobles, warriors, and elders from the Moonlight Wolf Clan had gathered from all over their territories, forming a teeming crowd. In the center of the square stood a 3-meter high black stone monument, its surface engraved with the names of the ancestors. In front of the monument was a long table covered in deep red velvet, upon which lay a scroll of parchment and a silver bowl. The 7 elders of the council sat in a row behind the table, their expressions solemn. You stood at the entrance to the square, wearing a dark gray, coarse, woven hunting tunic. You carried no sword at your waist, wore ordinary leather boots, and had neither armor nor talismans on your wrists. This was what Cole had sent you. The first stage of the Blood Moon trial forbids any metal objects, not even a single needle. Your only equipment is the wolf's fang in your palm, which you had clutched yourself last night. Cole hadn't even asked where you'd gotten it. Ella, Moon, Shadow, Cecil, the Grand Elder of the Council, called out your name. The crowd in the square stirred, and whispers spread like a tide. Moon Shadow. Which Moon Shadow? Since when did the Moon Shadow clan have a female Omega? I heard she's the clan leader's sister's daughter. The daughter of that defector. You heard those words hit you like stones, but you stood your ground, unmoving, your gaze fixed straight ahead. Audric stood to the right of the long table, dressed in a deep blue clan chief's robe, his expression composed and solemn. He even gave you a slight nod as you entered, like a dignified elder welcoming a wayward younger relative home. You looked back at him, neither nodding nor showing any emotion. Cecil unfurled the parchment and read aloud the rules of the Blood Moon trial. 3 trials over 3 days, with life and death at your own risk. If you give up midway, you shall never set foot in the Silver Moon Palace again, and your claim to the throne will be automatically revoked. If you fail the trials, regardless of whether you live or die, no one within the clan may hold you accountable. No one asked if you were willing. No one asked if you were ready. Cecil closed the parchment and looked up at you. Do you voluntarily accept the Blood Moon trials? The square fell silent. All eyes were on you. You lower your eyes to the wolf's fang in your palm, clenched so tightly it's sweating. Then lift your head and utter a single word. Yes. Cecil lifts a silver bowl, filled with a deep red liquid, an ancient tradition of the Moonlight Wolf clan, a mixture of crimson moon beast's blood and mountain spring water. To drink it is to swear a blood oath to the clan. You take the silver bowl. As its rim touches your lips, you catch a strong whiff of rust. You drain it in one gulp and set the bowl back on the table. You turn and walk toward the wilderness beyond the square, your back straight without looking back. The entrance to the Crimson Moon Wilderness is a narrow, elongated canyon. The stone walls on either side are covered in dark red moss, and the air is thick with the scent of decaying matter mixed with the urine of wild beasts. The morning light has not yet fully penetrated the depths of the canyon. The darkness ahead awaits you like a gaping maw. You step into the canyon, your footsteps echoing off the stone walls, once, twice, 3 times, before being swallowed whole by the darkness. Cole stood on the high platform in the square, watching your figure disappear into the canyon's entrance. His hand rested on the stone railing, his fingertips slowly rubbing against the rough surface. But he said nothing. Viola had walked up beside him at some point, leaning against the railing with her arms crossed. She too gazed in that direction. Guess how many days she'll last. 3. I'll bet a day and a half. A dinner. Cole turned and glanced at her. Viola shrugged, her tone unusually serious. It's not that I don't believe in her. It's just that hunters recently reported a mutated red-backed wolf in those wilds, a full-grown male, nearly 2 meters at the shoulder. She doesn't even have a knife. I know. And you still let her go. Cole turned his gaze back to the canyon entrance in the distance, his voice low enough to be a whisper. She needs to know she can do it. Deep within the canyon, the darkness is thick enough to feel like a physical presence, enveloping you. The ground beneath your feet shifts from gravel to damp earth, and the scent of wild beasts grows heavier in the air. Your pupils dilate slowly in the darkness. You'd never noticed before that your night vision becomes exceptionally sharp when you're tense. The moss on the tree trunks, the claw marks on the ground, a pair of green glowing eyes in the distant bushes. You can see it all clearly. You stop in your tracks and stare at those green eyes. They're staring right back at you. Your heart is racing, but your hands aren't shaking. You bend down, pick up a thick branch from the ground, snap off the branches in a few quick motions, and weigh it in your hand. It's not ideal, but it'll have to do. Then you make a move you didn't even expect yourself. You open your mouth and let out a low, guttural growl from deep within your throat. That wasn't your voice. Not entirely. The sound seemed to burst forth from some long dormant place, deep within your chest, hoarse, rough, and carrying a primal threat. The bushes nearby rustled. Those green eyes blinked once, then vanished. You stood rooted to the spot, clutching the branch, your chest heaving violently, your palms drenched in sweat. You've never made a sound like that before. You didn't even know an omega could make a sound like that. But you don't have time to think about it, because your ears pick up a heavier sound, footsteps drawing nearer, heavy, slow, each one carrying weight, as if some colossal creature were making its way through the thicket. You turn around and see a wolf emerge from the mist. It's no ordinary wolf. It was a full size larger than any wolf shifter you'd ever seen in the pack, its shoulders nearly reaching your chest. A strip of dark red fur ran down its spine from the nape of its neck to the base of its tail, looking like a frozen streak of blood in the dim light. A red bat. It lowered its head, its amber vertical pupils locking onto you, a low growl rumbling in its throat. You clenched the branch in your hand, your palms sweaty, its rough bark digging into your knuckles. You took a half step back, your heel crushing a dry leaf with a faint crackle. The red-back wolf's ears twitched, and its hind legs bent slightly, the crouch before a leap. A single thought flashes through your mind: run. Your body reacts faster than your brain. You turn and take off, your boots kicking up mud and gravel as you go. Behind you, a series of heavy thuds echoes against the ground, one after another, growing closer. The wolf is chasing you. It's much faster than you are, and you can even feel its hot breath on the back of your neck. A gnarled old tree looms ahead of you, its trunk thick and sturdy, with the lowest branch nearly 3 meters off the ground. You don't slow down, you sprint straight toward it. 2 steps from the trunk, you leap into the air, push off with your toes, and hook your fingers onto the edge of the branch. Your body swings slightly in the air. You muster all your strength to reach up with your other hand. Then pull yourself up onto the branch with both arms. Just as you flip onto the branch, you hear a dull thud below. The red-backed wolf has sunk its teeth into the trunk you were just standing on. Wood chips fly everywhere, and a deep gash is torn into the trunk. You lay sprawled on the branch, gasping for breath, your chest heaving like a bellows, sweat dripping down your chin. The wolf circled beneath the tree, tail hanging low, occasionally glancing up at you, a low resentful growl rumbling in its throat. You looked down into its eyes. Those amber vertical pupils held no hunger, no madness. There was something in them, something you couldn't quite put your finger on, like a test, or perhaps a confirmation. It looked at you for a long time. Then it turned and strolled slowly into the mist, the tip of its tail flicking once at the edge of your vision, before it vanished. You slumped against the tree branch, feeling completely drained, every muscle in your body trembling. You opened your palm. The wolf's fang had left a deep red mark, with tiny droplets of blood seeping from the edges. You looked down at the wound. In the dim light of dawn, a faint silver glow shimmered within the bloodstain. It was exactly the same as that day in the dungeon. You stared at the silver light for a long time, then pulled your sleeve down to cover the wound, leaned against the tree trunk, and closed your eyes. You needed rest because this was only the first day. Before the smile on the face at the entrance to the crevice had fully spread, your branch had already pierced his forehead. His head snapped back violently, and he stumbled backward 2 steps before his heel caught on a protruding rock, sending him crashing to the ground. Blood gushed from both nostrils, smearing half his face. His companion, another man slightly thinner, charged in from the side, reaching out to grab your ankle. You kicked him squarely on the back of the hand. He yelped and pulled his hand back, and you seized the moment to burst out of the crevice. There were 3 of them out there. The one whose nose you'd stabbed scrambled to his feet, his face covered in blood, while the other 2 flanked you from left and right. Clutching a branch, you backed up a few steps until your back was pressed against a tree trunk, leaving you with nowhere to retreat. The blood-covered man wiped his nose with his sleeve, looked down at the spreading red stain on his cuff, then looked up and grinned at you. You've got some skills. You gripped the branch tightly. Who sent you? That's none of your business. Then, you've come all this way for nothing. The man tilted his head, sizing you up. We're not here to kill you. The chieftain said just to bring you back. If you cooperate, I promise not to hurt you. If you don't, he reached into his boot and drew a short blade. The edge flashed a cold gleam through the shadows of the trees. I'll still take you back, but the package might be missing a few parts. You stared at the blade. Your heart was racing, but your mind was unusually clear. You calculated the distance. You had a chance to dash into the low thicket to your right before he could close in on you. Once you were inside the thicket, your size advantage would come into play. You were shorter and lighter than them, and you could squeeze through gaps they couldn't fit through. Your toes shifted outward, half an inch. Then a voice drifted through the woods, neither high nor low, laced with a lazy drawl. 3 men against an unarmed Omega. The Moon Shadow family's reputation is getting worse by the day. The blood-streaked man whipped his head around. He wasn't the only one. The other 2 turned simultaneously. You followed their gaze. Viola Moon Shadow was leaning against the trunk of a pine tree, her arms crossed over her chest, her left foot resting on a protruding root. A few dead leaves had fallen onto her dark green hunting jacket. She looked as though she'd walked quite a distance. All 3 men froze, not just because of her appearance, but because of her identity. The eldest daughter of the Moon Shadow family, the royal chief guard, and Audrich's biological daughter. The blood-stained man clearly recognized her. His expression shifted from ferocity to confusion. Miss, how did you? Viola's gaze swept past his shoulder and met yours for an instant. The glance was so brief that the 3 of them didn't even notice it. Then she turned her gaze back to the man's face, her tone as matter of fact as if discussing the weather. Go back and tell my father that his men have overstepped their bounds, trespassing into the trial zone during the Blood Moon trials. You don't need me to remind you of the clan's punishment for that, do you? The blood-stained man opened his mouth. Young lady, this was ordered personally by the clan chief. I told you to deliver a message, not to explain. The blood-covered man fell silent. He gripped the short blade so tightly, his knuckles turned white, clearly struggling to restrain himself. But in the end, he sheathed the knife in his boot and gave a slight nod to the other 2. The trio turned, and dragging a comrade, whose nose had been gouged by a branch, vanished into the depths of the forest. You leaned against the tree trunk, your hand still trembling slightly as you gripped the branch. Viola glanced at you. Can you still stand? Yes. Viola didn't respond. She turned her back to you and said, Follow the stream downstream for 3 li. There's an abandoned hunter's cabin there with a hunting knife and a flint set inside. Don't say I told you. She set off immediately, her deep green silhouette quickly blending into the dappled shadows of the trees, as if she had never been there at all. You stood where you were, watching the direction she had vanished into, still catching your breath. The questions in your mind pricked at you like needles. She was Audrich's daughter. Why was she helping you? Had she truly come to help, or was this another trap set by Audrich? You clenched the branch tightly, the wounds on your knuckles rubbed against the rough bark, drawing fresh drops of blood. You glanced down, that faint silver flash flickered and vanished within the bloodstain. You took a deep breath and turned to walk downstream toward the stream. Whether Viola was friend or foe, you certainly needed that hunting knife. The wind still howls through Moonlight Ravine. You stand rooted to the spot, clutching that silver wolf-headed banner. Yet what lies before your eyes is no longer the broken bridge, nor the wilderness, nor the dusky crimson sky of evening. You stand in a completely enclosed stone chamber. The walls on all four sides are black, not a painted black, but the kind of black that seeps from the very core of the stone, as if it had been smoked for 1,000 years. There are no windows, no doors, no lights, yet you can see everything clearly, for the walls themselves are glowing, not with light, but with that faint phosphorescence that occasionally appears in the darkness, making you doubt your own eyes. It looks as though the stone walls are covered with extremely fine silvery, white veins trembling ever so slightly like blood vessels. You glance down at your hands. You were still clutching the flagpole, but the flagpole had turned into a dried-out bone, grayish-white, covered in ancient script you couldn't make out at all. You let go abruptly. The bone fell to the ground and crumbled into a pile of powder. "Don't be afraid." The voice sounded again, closer than before, as if someone were speaking right into your ear. "What you're stepping on is your own flesh and blood." You spun around abruptly. No one was there. In the very center of the stone chamber, a cluster of light suddenly flared up. The light rose from the ground, starting no larger than a firefly, then gradually expanding, stretching, and finally coalescing into a vague human form. The figure grew clearer, a woman with long hair, her face blurred as if veiled by a mist. But you recognized the style of her dress. The pattern was identical to that on the small scrap of fabric your mother had included in her letter. Your lips trembled slightly. "Mother," the shadowy figure did not answer. She raised her hand and pointed toward the eastern wall of the stone chamber. You followed the direction of her finger. On the eastern wall, the silvery, white patterns began to flow faster, as if the blood and veins had been infused with new life. They converged, intertwined, and arranged themselves, eventually forming an image, a silver wolf standing atop a mountain peak, tilting its head back to howl at the moon. But this was no ordinary wolf. On its forehead was a star-shaped mark, and that star was bleeding. Silver blood trickled down its snout, and with every drop that hit the ground, a white flower bloomed. The scene shifts, the white flowers wither rapidly. Once they've faded, the ground is revealed, a landscape covered entirely in bones. Countless bones like a white desert. Amidst the piles of bones stands a slender girl, her back to you, her disheveled black hair cascading down her shoulders. She turns around. "It is you." Yet it is not you. That you has silver, white pupils, devoid of irises, like two frozen moons. You look into your own eyes, and your stomach churns, for what you see in those eyes is no longer fear, but an expression you have never seen on your own face. It is calm. It is the kind of calm that comes from knowing the outcome of everything, with no ripples left to disturb the surface. The image began to shatter, like a mirror struck by a hammer, cracks spreading outward from the center until it shattered into a million shimmering silver shards. The stone chamber plunged back into darkness. The blurry figure had vanished, but you heard one final sentence. The voice was no longer gentle or soft. It had transformed into an aged tone, as if crawling up from the depths of the earth, each word carrying the rough texture of stone grinding against stone. "The one chosen by the moon goddess is destined to water the throne with blood. Your mother saw the end of this path. She chose to close her eyes. Will you continue down it?" You stood in the darkness, empty-handed. The hunting knife was still sheathed at your waist, its cold touch pressing against your ribs like a silent reminder. You did not answer the voice, but your hand rested on the hilt, clenching it tightly. Then you spoke, your voice not loud, yet echoing repeatedly within the stone chamber, like a stone cast into a deep well. "My standing here is the answer." The stone chamber vanished. You found yourself back on the broken bridge of Moonlight Ravine, the evening breeze ruffling your hair, the silver wolf, headed banner still planted in the mud beside you. It was as if nothing had ever happened, but there was something new in the palm of your hand, a silvery white wolf scale, cold, hard, its edges as sharp as a blade. You clench it, cutting your palm open. blood flows out, seeping into the scales grooves. You look down as your blood slowly spreads across the silvery, white scale, like ink bleeding into rice paper. Then you see a line of text emerge on the scale. Not the kind written with ink, but more like a mark that has grown from within the metal itself. Do not trust any moon shadow until you return to the palace. The wind died down. You looked up toward the silver moon palace. Twilight was closing in, the last streak of orange. Red light on the horizon was being swallowed inch by the deep blue night sky. You held the scale in your hand. The blood seeping through your fingers fell drop by drop onto the dry earth, quickly absorbed, leaving no trace. The wind from the moonlight rift began to blow again, carrying the chill rising from the abyss, ruffling the tattered hem of your cloak. You glanced down at your shadow. In the last rays of the setting sun, that shadow seemed to stand straighter than you did. You've been traveling all night. The journey from Moonlight Ravine to Silver Moon Palace takes a day for someone of average stamina, but it took you a full night and half a morning. You've barely stopped drinking from the stream when thirsty and slowing your pace when tired, but never letting yourself come to a complete halt. The scabs on your legs have been rubbed raw, blood seeping into your boots, leaving a blurry wet footprint with every step. You knew what you were racing against. You set out before sunrise on the first day, and you had to be back at Blood Moon Square before sunrise on the third. You weren't sure what the consequences of being late would be, but you didn't want to find out. As the first light of dawn began to glow on the horizon, you saw the spires of the palace. Blood Moon Square was already packed with people, just as teeming as it had been 3 days ago, but this time no one was whispering. All eyes are fixed on the narrow path leading to the square's entrance, the very path you walked down 3 days ago. The sound of your footsteps echoes from the distance, the thud of boots on flagstones, heavy, uneven, and distinctly dragging. You emerge from the morning mist, caked in mud, your sleeve torn wide open, revealing a black, crusted wound on your forearm. Your hair was a tangled mess, your face smeared with mud and blood, yet your eyes shone with a clarity unbecoming of someone who had been on the run for 2 days and 3 nights without sleep. In your hand, you clutched the silver wolf-headed banner, its shaft carved with dense, rugged runes. You slammed it into the ground, the base of the shaft striking the flagstones with a dull thud. Elder Cecil rose from his chair. He cut straight to the point, asking only, "Did you personally pull this banner from the ground on the opposite side of the broken bridge in Moonlight Ravine?" You met his gaze. Yes. Cecil turned his attention to the runes at the base of the pole, pulled a yellowed parchment scroll from his robes, and unfolded it, comparing each character one by one. No one in the square spoke. The wind swept through the flag, making it flap loudly. Cecil set down the parchment, looked up, and declared in a booming voice, "The runes at the base of the flagpole matched the ancestral records, exactly the second trial passed." Your grip on the flagpole loosened slightly, then Cecil's next words snapped you back to reality. "The third trial, the Moon Shadow Chamber. Did you sense the chamber's call while on the broken bridge in the rift?" Your heart skipped a beat. You hesitated for half a second. You had seen the vision, heard the voice, and touched that silvery wolf scale, but you didn't know if that counted as officially entering the chamber. And that wolf scale was currently pressed against your ribs, cold and hard, like a silent secret. You opened your mouth to answer, but a voice rang out from the crowd. "She has entered it." The crowd parted, and Odrich stepped forward. He didn't look at you. His gaze was fixed on Cole. His voice was deep and steady, like an ancient river that had flowed for ages. "The bloodstains on her have a silvery sheen. That is a mark unique to the Moon Shadow Chamber. Only the bloodline recognized by the chamber will have bloodstains that turn silver in the moonlight." All eyes turned to you. You glanced down at your arm. The scarred wound, now covered in black scabs, showed no signs of anything unusual in the morning light. But deep down, you knew Odrich was telling the truth. Elder Cecil looked at you. Ella Moonshadow, did you sense the Moonshadow Chamber's call upon the broken bridge of Moonlight Ravine? You remained silent for 3 breaths. Then you reached into your robe and pulled out the silvery wolf scale. The morning light shone through the scale, casting a slender silver shadow on the ground. The edges of the shadow trembled faintly as if alive. It gave me a scale and left me a message. What did it say? You clasp the scale in your hand and look up into Elder Cecil's eyes. Do not trust any moon shadow until you return to the palace. The square falls silent once more. Not the solemn stillness of before, but a suffocating silence, as if something were pressing down on everyone. Everyone's gaze shifted away from you and slowly turned toward Odrich. Odrich stood where he was, expressionless, but the index finger of the hand hanging at his side was tapping the seam of his trousers ever so slightly, neither fast nor slow. At a steady rhythm. It was like a door knocker, tapping against a door stroke by stroke. Cecil set down the parchment scroll he was holding and remained silent for a long time. Then he spoke slowly. All stages of the Blood Moon trial have been completed, effective immediately. Ella Moonshadow is authorized to enter the royal bloodline verification process. In 7 days, at the Moon Goddess Festival, the Council of Elders will publicly verify the authenticity of her bloodline to determine whether she is eligible for marriage into the royal family. Verification of bloodline. You clench the wolf scale in your hand, your knuckles turning slightly white. Odrich looks at you, the corners of his mouth curving slightly. It is an extremely restrained smile, so subtle you can barely make it out. But you see it. It is not fear, nor tension. It is anticipation. He is waiting for you to step into that verification ceremony, into the trap he has personally set. You stand in the center of the square, the morning light streaming over the palace spires to fall upon your face. You are ragged from head to toe, clutching a banner and a scale in your hands, your shadow standing at your feet. Cole hadn't spoken a word, but you could feel his gaze fixed on you. It hadn't wavered since the moment you stepped out of the morning mist. He had seen the faint smile on Odrich's lips. He had seen the white knuckles as you gripped the scale. His fingers rested lightly on the hilt of the unsheathed longsword at his waist, but he made no move. He simply stood there, like a sword still in its sheath. The crowd in the square began to disperse, footsteps clattering, voices rising in conversation. You stood in the center of the gradually emptying square, clutching that silver scale. The morning light fell upon you, stretching your shadow long, so long that when you stood beside Cole, the 2 shadows almost merged into one.